Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com, dwyersportsbetting.com. On Roku, we're in the sports section, Dwyer Boxing and Sports News. The vanity code, one word, is Dwyer Boxing News, right? On iTunes, same thing, Dwyer Boxing News. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Now, a lot of boxing news is breaking today. According to rumors, some reports, Vladimir Klitschko's next fight is going to be in the United States against probably the best American heavyweight out there, Jennings. Right? There's also news breaking that Sergey Kovalev, the light heavyweight champion, is scheduled to fight Jean Pascal, assuming that Pascal gets by his next opponent. I think that's an intriguing fight, right? Let me say this about the Vladimir Klitschko Jennings fight, and I do believe there's really only one heavyweight champion out there. With all due respect to Bermane Stiverne, the heavyweight champion in my eyes is Vladimir Klitschko, right? The only other person who might have a claim to a belt at heavyweight would be Vladimir's brother Vitaly, who retired with the belt, right? I was not as impressed as I hoped I would be with Jennings' performance in the first half of the Mike Perez fight. Now, Perez, shorter than Vladimir Klitschko, slick customer, works behind a jab, right? Understand, Jennings is going to have to get by Klitschko's jab, and Klitschko against right-handed opponents is as good as he's ever been, right? Klitschko's now leading with power shots on occasion. Now, Jennings does have much more of a chance, in my opinion, than a Stiverne who lacks the foot speed, or a Deontay Wilder who has a big right hand, but in my opinion, lacks the depth of technique to deal with Vladimir Klitschko. Now let's talk about a fighter who I think, quite frankly, would have a better shot of beating Vladimir Klitschko than all of the above, right? And that's the UK's Tyson Fury. Now, longtime subscribers here know that I've been touting Fury for a long time, right? Fury's a bit dangerous because Fury seems to have some mental health issues. But there's no questioning him in the ring, especially after this virtuoso performance against the very limited Dereck Chisora. Let me say this. You know Dereck Chisora is going to come at you on his front foot. I understand late in the last fight, like the 9th round, he finally figured out that the front foot was useless against Tyson Fury, and he actually started lingering outside, right? He was discouraged from using the front foot. But Dereck Chisora's game is to come at you with a front foot, a non-stop attack, where he's throwing wide looping punches, right? Sometimes the unorthodox nature of the wide looping punches confuses an opponent who then gets caught by the punch. Sometimes Chisora's non-stop aggression wears down an opponent. You remember the Malik Scott fight. Scott looked good early. Eventually, Chisora closed the distance and started battering Scott. Then Scott, of course, hit the canvas, and we can debate it all night. May have not beaten the count, may have beaten the count, right? But Dereck Chisora looked absolutely limited. Absolutely limited against Tyson Fury. Now let me say this, and I don't say it lightly, right? One of the most terrifying fights in recent memory that Vladimir Klitschko had was the first fight against Tony Thompson. Don't let the knockout in that fight cause amnesia. Don't let the poor scoring by the judges, right? We know how the judges had it at the time of the stoppage, confuse you. What I want you to do is to replay that fight and just listen to the man in Klitschko's corner, right? The great Emanuel Stewart. Stewart's concerned, right? Look at Klitschko's inability to land his jab. Understand, Tony Thompson went into that fight with a bad knee. Understand that Klitschko is not the current Klitschko. That Klitschko stayed in his stance, right? Vladimir Klitschko's a righty. He didn't want to open up. He didn't want to lead with straight left hands. Everything is keyed off a jab. And in my opinion, he was getting outboxed that night. That's a fight that, in my opinion, Tony Thompson, who did get destroyed in the rematch, but that night, and boxing's a night-by-night basis, that night, Tony Thompson was exposing Vladimir Klitschko. Right? Now, Thompson, understand, does not have the mobility of Tyson Fury. Understand, Thompson doesn't use height as well as Tyson Fury. Also, and this is very important, understand that Thompson doesn't have the right-handed game of Tyson Fury. The Fury you saw against Dereck Chisora was an orthodox fighter fighting out of a southpaw stance. Tyson Fury's a switch, right? Understand his game hangs together. This Tyson Fury is not the Tyson Fury you saw against Kevin Johnson, where he's trying to fight lefty, but parts of it aren't quite there. Here it's all there. You're watching Tyson Fury shoot a right jab, and keep in mind, the right hand is his dominant hand. Right? If Tony Thompson against Vladimir Klitschko would have had the extra, right, an ability to fight right-handed, an ability to lead with his power hand, the ability to tie up and fight inside that Tyson Fury has right now, we would have had a new heavyweight champion. I believe Tyson Fury would give Vladimir Klitschko all he can handle, and I believe Vladimir Klitschko knows that. That's why Klitschko has been working on and improving parts of his game. Understand, if I'm righty and I'm shooting a jab and I'm up against an opponent who knows how to use length and who himself is outside and who's a southpaw, understand that that jab has to get through things it doesn't have to get through if I'm fighting an orthodox fighter. In other words, an orthodox fighter, that jab's just coming in here, right? A southpaw, especially Fury, tall man, long reach, excellent timing, that jab has to get through a shoulder. What I want you to do is to look at the Fury-Dereck Chisora fight. Look at how Fury's tucking his chin. Right? Understand Kubrat Pulev, who just fought Vladimir Klitschko, was a righty, vulnerable to lead straight left hands. Tyson Fury isn't. Out of a southpaw stance. Right, now let me tell you what happens when Klitschko is dealing with a southpaw who can use length and who can avoid his jab. Klitschko has to open up, and it's unnatural. Look at the Thompson replay, right? Excuse me, the rematch of the Tony Thompson fight. You're going to notice Thompson comes down and takes the first round, folks. Right? The first round picks up where the last fight left off. Then Klitschko literally leaves his shell and then starts, and I'm not kidding, it's on film, then starts going like this. Starts moving his upper body to confuse Tony Thompson. Then he starts throwing straight right hands to try to take Thompson out of there, right? That's not Klitschko's comfort zone. What if he tries to do that and his opponent is able to shift to orthodox? What if his opponent's left jab is actually as good as his right jab? Right? Let me point out too, Tyson Fury can go to the body. Between Klitschko, Vladimir Klitschko, and Tyson Fury, Fury's the much better man inside. Tyson Fury's skill level is such that at times it looks boring. Take a look at the Dereck Chisora fight. Understand, Tyson Fury is in a plan B stance. He's a righty. He's in a southpaw stance. You're going to see Chisora wing several right hands. They're looping punches. Right? Understand, Chisora has power. Something stopped Malik Scott. And you're going to notice that Fury is so skilled that Fury just catches it on a forearm. The punch is effortlessly neutralized. Fury doesn't even have to break a sweat on that punch. Right? So, Vladimir Klitschko's people today said that if they can't reach a deal with Brian Jennings, they're going to pick a fight in Germany. But the next opponent is not going to be Tyson Fury. Right? Vladimir Klitschko knows he needs time for Tyson Fury. Right? Tyson Fury, that's a framed fight. Understand, Tyson's the mandatory for one of his belts. The Klitschko people are saying they'll fight Fury after the next fight. My advice to Tyson Fury, and it's very different than Johnny Nelson's advice, and look, Nelson's one of my favorite people in boxing. Young guys need to figure out that Johnny Nelson was the cruiserweight champion for several years. Right? Johnny Nelson's a badass. Right? This would be like Carl Froch, let's say a generation from now, being in the booth holding a mic, talking to younger guys who don't realize that Froch was a champion himself for years who had fought in big fights. That's the position Johnny Nelson's in. Right? Johnny Nelson wants Fury to think about fighting Bermane Stiverne or Deontay Wilder. Let's get real. There's only one heavyweight champion. Let me say too, Fury's style matches up better against Klitschko than it does these other guys. Right? Understand, Klitschko sometimes has a height advantage on guys. Against Fury, he has none. Fury knows he's better inside. You didn't really see a lot of inside here against Dereck Chisora. If you want Fury's inside game, take a look at Fury against Steve Cunningham. Right? Fury also knows that his ability to fight left-handed is going to open up Vladimir Klitschko. Now, I've heard people talk about other fighters as saying, okay, yeah, that person's chinny. Right? Understand, Klitschko was knocked down multiple times in a fight against Sam Peter. Right? Klitschko won that fight, but he was on the canvas multiple times. Understand, Klitschko hit the canvas against Layman Brewster. I think Klitschko likes to fight at a measured pace. Right? If he opens up, gets rid of his defensive construct, and is forced to fight at a different rate, he's going to be vulnerable. Tony Thompson was up on the ropes paralyzed in the second fight. But look at how open Vladimir Klitschko is in that second fight. Klitschko gives up his jab. He starts going like this and trying to throw home run balls. What happens if he's fighting a guy his height, he starts going like this, the guy takes a step forward, puts a shoulder on him, Bellew style, right? Tony Bellew against Nathan Cleverly. Puts a shoulder on him and starts to rake his opponent's rib cage. We haven't seen that too much against Klitschko because, of course, Vladimir Klitschko is a master at keeping you outside with the jab. Then when guys like Alexander Povetkin, shorter men, get inside, Klitschko's able to tie them up, right? Put a forearm on the back of their head or shove them under the underarm. What happens if Tyson Fury stands tall and can't get tied up inside? Worse yet, what happens if Tyson Fury starts to come inside, then does a James DeGale? Shifts from southpaw to right-handed, different set of angles, and then starts throwing straight right hands. Now, I believe the public is fooled by Tyson Fury. Right? Tyson Fury is a bit of a loudmouth. We don't take loudmouths seriously. Right? You look at these young guys sprouting off and you think, this guy just hasn't been around the block enough. This young guy just doesn't know his limitations yet. He's too untested. Right? His ego is unchecked. You also look at Tyson Fury's body and you say, whoa, wait a moment. This guy doesn't look like Vladimir Klitschko. This guy doesn't have a body like David Haye. I'm seeing some body fat on this guy. Right? But this is boxing. It's not bodybuilding. Understand Ali, another loudmouth from a different era, was a big underdog against Sonny Liston the first time. And Ali, like Tyson Fury, had an unbeaten record going into that fight. In fact, if you look at the men in the middle of the ring, Ali's bigger than Sonny Liston. Is it possible that Tyson Fury is much better than advertised, has been improving his game, and is now really at a point where his skill level is better than Vladimir Klitschko's? I'll agree. The Klitschko I see today is the best Klitschko I've ever seen. I'll agree, Vladimir Klitschko is really a Joe Louis type character. He's been champion now for several years. You think about the guys he's fought, I would say two of the better opponents for him are guys he's already beaten. Right? David Haye, Alexander Povetkin. If he never fights either again, you know, how could any of us say, hey, he ducked guys he actually got in the ring with? Right? He's running roughshod through the heavyweight division. The last guy he beat, Kubrat Pulev, was unbeaten. His next fight against Brian Jennings, if they can sign the contract, is against an unbeaten fighter. If he fights Tyson Fury after that, that would be against an unbeaten fighter. But let me say this, right? At some point, he's going to run into someone who's prepared for him. Are you sure that that's not Tyson Fury? I'll tell you, the Dereck Chisora fight is a complete mismatch. You've heard me here before say that I thought Vladimir Klitschko had big problems with Tony Thompson in the first fight. Listen to Emanuel Stewart for that first fight. Read the post-fight interviews with Tony Thompson, where Thompson talks about how he gave that fight away at the end by foolishly staying too close to Klitschko. I want you to look at the problems Chisora has, trying to close the distance between himself and Tyson Fury. When Chisora gets up close to Fury and gets Fury up on the ropes, I want you to look at how comfortable Tyson Fury is. Understand, Tyson Fury isn't winded in the slightest at the end of this fight. Right? Dereck Chisora's finished. His face looks beaten up. on the telecast, the announcers, for at least the 2 rounds preceding the stoppage, are saying, oh gee, Chisora's corner should pull the plug. That's how bad it is, folks. That's how one-sided it is. What I want you to do is to not look at Chisora, look at Fury. He had just fought a guy who's front foot heavy, who in my opinion had David Haye completely exhausted in the 5th round of their fight. We forget, because knockouts cause amnesia. But David Haye certainly is more exhausted in the 5th round of his fight against Dereck Chisora than, let's say, Malik Scott is. Why isn't Tyson Fury exhausted? Is it possible that this guy has a proficiency in shifting gears, right? Changing stances. Orthodox southpaw, right? Understand, as you're watching this fight, you're watching a chameleon. He's not even a southpaw, right? Look at the jab. How could he possibly, in a secondary stance, have a jab as good as this? Look at Chisora's face at the end of this fight. Let's hope Vladimir Klitschko is who I think he is. I believe Klitschko is a guy who is very concerned about his place in history. I think when guys pop up who look like they're real challengers to him, right? Alexander Povetkin, I think Klitschko makes it a point to go fight that guy, right? David Haye, right? It might take Klitschko some time to do it, but Klitschko usually does it. It takes an effort to hold multiple belts because every sanctioning body has a different mandatory challenger. Klitschko has been diligent in going after mandatory challengers. One of his belts, I believe it's the WBO, now has Tyson Fury as his mandatory challenger. We should all be grateful. The world can laugh at this. They can go ahead. Right? Klitschko stock's never been higher after that devastating performance against Kubrat Pulev. Right? I'm surprised by how early that KO was. I thought that fight would go several rounds. Right? My point to you is simply this. Circle the calendar. When that fight's announced, you need to clear out your own personal holiday. Right? Tell your daughter, hey babe, I know this is going to be your first wedding, but it can't be on this Saturday. Right? It's that big. I think Fury Klitschko would be the event of 2015. Right? Not Pacquiao, Mayweather, not some of these other fights. Right? I think Fury poses right now the biggest challenge for Vladimir Klitschko of the guys he hasn't fought. Right? I think Alexander Povetkin, especially after watching him against Carlos Takam, would be a great rematch. But I understand the boxing public likes new, not repeats. Right? Especially when the first fight was lopsided. I know David Haye has been out the ring for a while. Right? Even Haye supporters would say their man might not be as crisp as he would be if he were fighting on a regular basis. There might be some rust. Understand Tyson Fury, after a long layoff, entered the ring against Dereck Chisora and throws down a lopsided masterpiece that's so dominant he looks bored during the fight. It's breathtaking when you realize he's fighting left-handed. This would be like watching Klitschko shutting out a guy, and then you realize he's actually fighting out of a southpaw stance, and he's doing it behind a right jab, not a left jab, and everything else is flowing. In other words, the hooks are landing, his defense is intact. This isn't a momentary gimmick for a portion of a round. This is a guy fighting southpaw round after round and dominating. Simply put, Fury has me believing he can beat Vladimir Klitschko. Let's look forward to that fight. Fury's a major talent. He's much better than advertised. If I'm Tyson Fury, I don't waste time on secondary fights. Sooner or later, Vladimir Klitschko is going to have to hop in the ring with you. Save yourself for the heavyweight championship. Don't accept chump change to fight anyone other than the heavyweight champion of the world. You win that fight, it'll make your career. Let me hear from you. Leave your comments for me here online. Visit us at gamblersadvisory.com. Thanks for stopping by.